Hello and welcome to Take Refuge 3D. Welcome back, and if you're new here, then welcome. Now in this video we're going to learn how to make this radical dystopian cyberpunk surfboard. Impractical it might be, but it does look cool. Now we're going to start off simple and build up on a design, with each phase building on the last until we have a cohesive design, and we're going to use Plasticity's tools to aid in using shape language, and maybe even tackle it with some multiple approaches to achieve a similar result, and why you might want to use one or go another way. Now, this video is a follow-up really to a recent video I made for complete beginners to Plasticity. Now, in the other video I covered the user interface and basics of how to use Plasticity right at the beginning of that video. So if you're super brand new to Plasticity or to 3D modeling in general, go back and watch that video first, as we covered a lot of basic concepts. This video is also beginner friendly, but I'm not going to cover the user interface in this one. I will keep my keys on the screen at the bottom right here, and I'll try to call out commands as I'm going. But if you feel like I'm moving too quickly, feel free to pause and rewind. Now, I will use some external reference images, and you can download them from the description below. And just before we crack in, don't forget that you can get a 10% discount off any Plasticity license with my code REFUGE10. You get a discount, it helps out the channel a little bit, so everybody wins. And if you're stumped on whether you want to buy a studio or an indie license, I did a video recently breaking down the differences between the two, and you might find that useful when choosing. So let's crack on with it. So what you can see here is the surfboard that I made earlier, and it's a kind of a cyberpunk design. You really wouldn't want to surf on it, but it's got all of the main components that a surfboard would have, like a fin and everything like that. So here we are in a new scene, and straight off the bat I'm going to delete the default cube, right, and I'm just going to get rid of that. And what we want to do now is we want to bring in some reference images. So I've got two here. I actually used ChatGPT to make these. Now they'll come in, you can drag and drop them directly like that. Okay, another way is you can go F import and just choose a file to import. And we can import them like that, or you can go up to your P menu and you can choose import from there, import or append. So here you can see that we've got two images in the scene. One is surfboard front and one is surfboard side. So I'm just going to select surfboard front. And I'm going to hit R on my keyboard and X to constrain it to the X axis. And I'm going to go 90. And then that's going to come up on the front mode. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go R. And same again, X 90 to get that up on the front as well. But when we choose this one, we also want to rotate this one. And you can see here that we want to constrain it to the Y axis. So for whatever reason, in this case, it's the Y axis, the green one. And we want to just do that by 90 degrees. Now, we want to change the materials on this because this is a bit difficult to see. So if we go into 3 right mode, we should be able to see that directly. And we just want to bring this one across. So you can select this one and go G. And bring this across till the tip of the surfboard and the base of the surfboard are sort of in that Z axis. And then if we press 1, we just want to make sure that that's straight through the middle. And that is more or less what we want to do. So now selecting the first one, we want to hit M on our keyboard to choose the material. We want the depth to be front only, so that when we go like that, we don't see it around. And we just want to bring the opacity down to 9. And then same with this one. Okay, so front, and then we want to just change the material on this one down to 0.9, so we get that opacity. And we want to select that, and I didn't do it properly on the first one. Front 0.9 and OK, or right click to select. Okay, let's get moving on. Now, I want to lock both of these so that when we hit the screen, we don't select them. Okay, so I'm just going to press this lock icon here. So these are kind of like stuck in place now. We will be able to like hide them and whatnot when we need them. So now that we've got our front and side set up, we can go about building our shapes. So starting with a corner rectangle, I'm just going to choose the corner rectangle from my toolbar over here, and I'm going to bring it right to the center, and I'm going to lock it to where it says origin, and I'm going to drag that down till it's a little bit bigger than the surfboard, and I'm going to press C to change it from a corner to a center rectangle. Okay, and then we've got our first shape, and I'm gonna, if we go into point mode, you'll see that it's got 4 control vertices on each corner. Now we want a little bit more to be able to build up this shape, so I'm going to press Shift and S. Okay, and this subdivides it, so we've got now 3 across the top and 3 across the side. So what we're going to do is we're going to just select these ones at the top with our marquee, and I'm going to press scale, and I'm going to scale that right in. I'm going to take these ones in the middle, I'm going to scale them out. I'm also going to press G to drag them to where I think the apex of that curve is. Okay, so the apex of this curve. So, and we're going to bring that in, and we're just going to G, and we're just going to manipulate that until it looks about right. Okay, and then we do the same at the bottom. Okay, and then we can G and drag this up, scale this in. It's very simple. You know, if you're used to polygon modeling in Blender or something like this, this is a little bit like the, you know, E to extrude, you know, S to scale. So we're just pressing S to scale and G to grab, and just moving things around until, you know, spend a little bit of time on this component, because, you know, this is going to be your primary silhouette at the end of the day. So you start off slow, and then you can pick up pace as things get going. Okay. Now what I want to do now is at the top here, obviously we don't have this point. So let's just G, select these 3 only, and drag those down and scale them out, something like so. And then we're going to press T, and then you can trim this part of the curve off. So now it's not a closed loop anymore. Okay, and we can just select these 2 here, and we can go Shift B, and we will get a G2, we'll just go into front mode. We'll get a G2 bridge of vertex. You can actually take this right up to G3, and with each continuity level from G0 to G1, we get these little handles that we can play with. So G2 is more than enough for this, and we'll just get this nice point on here, roughly the same shape. So we might actually want to delete, trim out that curve there, and just bring these down a little bit more. G, something like that, Shift B, and just bring that up, make it a bit pointier, bring it down. And I think that's okay for this. We don't need to like really go too hardcore on that. Now, we don't have to join these together, but I'm going to. So we're going to press T. Sorry, we're going to press 2 on the keyboard and Shift select that. And we can just press J to join these together. And you'll notice over here that these 2 curves should become one. Okay, so now we've got 1 curve. Now, if we go 3 into right mode, we can see that that is directly down that line that we lined up our surfboard with earlier. Now, there's many different ways that you could make this shape. Probably the most accurate way would be to make a curved network and do a series of lofts and patches. But for this tutorial, so what we're going to do is we're going to still use box modeling, but we're going to do some surfacing. Now, I did allude to this kind of surfacing in the previous tutorial, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail here. So what I've just done there is I've selected my closed loop, and I've used the yellow ball here to bring this out, and then I'm pressing tab to mirror it, and if we press 3 across this red axis, okay? And so we're going to bring this out until it's roughly, doesn't need to match it up exactly at this point because we're going to manipulate that in a moment, but till it's roughly the size and shape of that surfboard. We don't want it to be too fat. Okay, and what we're going to do now is let's just go to our images and press the eyeball on surfboard front. Okay, by the way, if you haven't, those images are in the description for downloads, and I've just clicked on that curve and I'm hiding it with the H button, so it's still there but it's just hidden away. Okay, and now we've got our side and we can see that. Now I'm going to select the base, so the side that's got the fin on it, and now we're going to do subdividing again, but we're going to subdivide the face. So at the moment we've got this face selected, and under the selection panel you can see it's called a plane. If I press Shift S, you see it gets turned into a spline. So now we're dealing with a spline surface. Okay, so that means you can manipulate it. So now we've got, like before, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if I grab these two here, I can pull, I should be able to. Okay, we've got faces selected as well. So we've got to make sure, sometimes you'll have multiple of these. So if you hold down Shift and you can check multiple of these. When we're manipulating points, we pretty much only want to be in control point mode. So if I select these two, we should be able to start moving this around and you can see what's happening there. But at the moment, we've only got the 4 points. So I'm going to select this face again and I'm going to press subdivide again until we've got these 9 points, right? So, and then we can go into write mode and we can just use our pink marquee by going left to right, just to select the points only. And see, you see again, I've got that faces selected there. That's because I selected the face. And then we can press G and we can drag this across here. And then underneath, if you go into X-ray mode up here, you can see we've got this point here. We can G and we can drag that up and you can see the line moving. I don't know if you can see it there, but you can see the line moving. We just want it to, like, doesn't need to be exact, right? We're building up a basic shape here, right? And you could drag that whole thing up if you wanted. And you can see that as we drag it up. So let's go right here and we go G and drag that across. And you can see that it's almost touching the actual edge of our image. But as we drag it up, it starts to conform to it more, because obviously the apex, or the point that's outwardly the most, is the one that is higher up, right? So now let's go down to the bottom one and do the same thing. Okay, and we can just G and just drag that across. Now let's do the same thing with the front side. Now let's subdivide that, okay, and subdivide it again. So we've got the 9 points. Now it can get very confusing on screen if you've got a lot of spline surfaces with all of these points. So we can actually just select one of the points from this other side that we're already finished with. We can press F and type in toggle points. Okay, so now we've toggled up that side, so we're only working with this side. We will toggle it back on in a moment though, but we're just getting our base shape from our profile. Okay, and once again we can G, drag that up there somewhere like that. Okay, G and drag that up. Okay, now if we go into front mode and we turn our front image back on, what you will notice is that this surfboard it has a little bit of a curve in the front, like, so the edges are lower than the front. So what we will do here is we'll just select these three in the middle, and for this front side we're going to be very, very delicate, and we'll go into side mode and we'll just G. Yeah, we'll G and we'll drag that. We don't want to select the face once again. So we'll just drag those three and we'll G and we'll just drag them out. And this is just going to give, if we turn this front and side off, all right, and we turn a different matte cap on under shader mode, you'll see that there's like a little bit of a curve in this. It's very, very subtle at the moment. You can see there's a little bit of a curve in this front here. Okay, and what we'll do, we'll toggle those points off. Okay, and we'll go back to the back and we'll toggle the points back on, and we're going to do the same thing, making sure that we're just in point mode only. But what we're going to do this time is we're going to grab these two outside ones and we're going to G and we're going to drag them in, and then we're going to grab this one inside one and we'll G and we'll drag that out. Okay, so we're getting a little bit of curvature there for our surfboard. Now I'm going to toggle the points off. I think for this basic shape here, just turning X-ray mode off by pressing either Alt-Z or using this button here. On Mac OS, I think it might be something different. Like I can't remember. Okay, so now we've got our shape, right? Now it might be really tempting to start to fillet this and get all of our edges on, which we will do in a moment, but let's get the rest of our silhouette. So let's just turn our front mode on. Okay, and I think if we I just want to bring this in ever so slightly on here for both sides. So let's select everything, just toggle it all. Okay, and just select all of this and Z and just scale it in. Or maybe these ones here, I don't know which one it was. There we go. And then we can grab this one in the middle and G. And there we've got it. Okay, so now we've pretty much got our base silhouette. So I'm going to turn this off and we just want to get this little detail in here. Okay, so the best way to go about that, I'm just going to turn this off for a moment and let's just bring in a cube right at the center. Okay, and we can just pull that back. And it looks like, let's press B to make it a new body. It's kind of intersecting there. So we can just pull this out. Okay. Select our main surfboard body, press Q and select this here. Okay. We can give it a little bit of a fillet here. Sorry, a chamfer. And maybe one here as well. Okay, so this is just first little bit of design to our overall silhouette. Okay, so let's go back into front mode and really let's get into the fun stuff. But like, let's just, before we do that, just make sure everything's perfectly symmetrical. We can mirror our thing across. So we can press Alt X, choose one of these X ones, and then press Q, right, to merge it. And we now know that it's symmetrical through the world origin. Okay, so let's turn our surfboard front on and let's just get some of these details in here. So what I'm going to really do is I'm just going to bring down this. We'll go into X-ray mode. We're going to lock that. So this is where we can start to use plasticity, sort of like hidden tools to work on some shape language. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a line, okay, and I'm bringing this across, okay, but I can't seem to lock it to that center point. So if I come down to the origin point, I can press Shift, just tap it, and now it locks these two purple lines, as you can see, and I can bring this down here like that. Okay, and I can duplicate that, bring it down like that, duplicate that, and bring it down like that. And I might want to keep these all a little bit higher. This one's not quite long enough. So if I just press that and FEXTEND, I can extend that curve out because I want these to be going outside of the body. Okay. And F extend. Okay. And now what we can do, we can press 2, select our 3 curves. Now, if you select from right to left, you select anything that gets touched. So I don't have to select the whole of these objects in order for them to get touched. And then we're just going to Alt-X to mirror those across. Okay. And we select these 3 and we can just, for now, join it all together. And I'm just going to bring these out to the front. Okay. So they're in front there. Okay. And we're going to do the same. We're going to bring a line across here. And we're just cutting up our, well, we're not even going to cut it up. We're just getting our shape language in really early. So we've got here, this is something that's been taken out. Now, if I go on this diagonal line like this, you can see the so we could call that like, I don't know, 130 and lock that to that. And I'm going to make this one a closed loop because I'm going to use that to cut that out. Okay. And we're going to do the same over here. Okay. So I'm going to bring this down and we're going to go 130 and we're going to lock to that one. 130. And we can bring that out like that. Okay. And we make that on the symmetry line. And then I can just bring this across and make this a closed loop. What I can do is I can go into edge mode and just make sure I'm selecting. That one's already closed, but we can join, this one's a bit broken up, so we can select all of our edges and join those together. Okay. And let's do the same with this section here. Okay, so we already know that it kind of starts over here, so we can start this from here. Okay, and what we can now do is we can use our existing angles that we've got, that we've made here, to bring that up here, and now we've got this line here that we can go along, and that's going to create a rhyming language. Okay, so I now have that angle available to me. And now I can tap this one here. Okay, and I should have that rhyming language there as well. Okay, as you can see, I can tap that. Tap that again. And I'm going to bring this down to the bottom here. Okay. I'm going to also make that a closed loop. And join that together. So all of those angles that I just chose there, I'm just joined that together. Okay, so all of those angles that I chose now match each other, which is going to make things so much easier. So what we can do now is just for a moment, hide the front image, and we want to just get our fillet in. So I don't recommend filleting micro details early on, but any fillets that help define the shape of your object, let's go with a G2 fillet if we can, or caudal. Okay, it's not allowing that, so let's hold down Alt, select the whole loop. Now, because we added some curvature to this front, it might be a little bit, it's got a bit more calculating to do, so it might be a little bit fiddly. Okay, but if it is, just be gentle with it and it should all come together nicely. Okay, so I don't think we're going to get, oh, we did get a G2 out of that. And you can also play with the tension, right? So you can reduce the tension here, or you can increase it. Okay, so the higher the tension, the tighter you're going to get the edges. So for this case, I really think I want something less than 50. So I'm going to go 0.3. Okay, and give it this nice smooth edge. And then that should still have G2 continuity. So if we turn our edges off, and I'm using a radial menu here, by the way, so you can obviously toggle your edges over here. Radial menus are something that you can set up in Plasticity to get different commands quickly. It is a little bit of a tiring process because you've got to write them basically manually, but I have made a radial menu builder app that you can get off my Gumroad to help you build those in a much more fun kind of way. In any case, let's move on from that. Okay, so we've now got our edges here. We can bring these curves that we created out to the front. Okay. And if we look at our reference image, we may want to just now, I'm gonna go into point mode. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select this one and this one, and I'm gonna press SZ0 just to flatten that, and then hit OK, and then I'm gonna drag it down. And this one doesn't look like it was doing a good thing, so we actually want this one, doesn't look like it's straight either. So let's select these two and go SX0. Okay. So those are nice and straight now. It may have damaged that angle, but I'm not going to cry about that too much. So we could really select all of these points right now and give them a slight fillet, right? To save us some drama later. Okay. And what I want to do now is I really want to just go I imprint. We'll turn our off. And we can change this to normal and vector. I think in that case, normal looks... And then we can make that occluded edge off the back. So let's actually fillet our backside as well while we're at it. I don't know whether to do a chamfer or a fillet here. I think a fillet will be fine. And then we want to limit at a stop point. But on the other side. So let's... Okay. That's okay. So what that's done there is we can go okay with that. I didn't like that. We can hit L and add a stop point for where we want this to stop. And then we can click that blue toggle to make it go around the other way. Okay, and then we can right click to select that. Okay, and then we want to mirror this whole object. I know this might look a bit chaotic on screen right now. I don't really want to hide all of my curves. So what we can do is we can just press period to isolate this for now. I'm going to turn off X-ray mode and I'm going to press 4, Alt X. We're going to mirror that across and we're going to press Q to union it. And as you can see, that our fillet there ends all the way down there. Okay, so we can then do something like we can chamfer this. Be very delicate here. And we'll just work with that for now. Okay, so It's just adding a little bit of variation. If we turn our... It doesn't do much actually, but oh well, we'll leave it as it is for now. And just going to click here to get rid of that isolated. So now what we can do is we can select this and we can hit I and then hit this object. And then we want to turn hide occluded off and go to normal. Or actually that whole thing that we just did probably ruined that. So let's just fix those fillets up. So if you went through that whole process, just go back and start again, which I'm going to do. I'm just going to fill up that whole thing. We're going to call it a G2 and we're going to call it a day. I'm not going to try anything fancy there. And as you can see here, some problems are already arising down the bottom. Okay. So but for now, we'll deal with that momentarily. So I'm going to press F. And you know, look, I'm making some mistakes as I go along. This is part of the process, right? You know, and problem solving is like 99% of like what 3D modeling is. So here we go. Now we can go press I, choose the body, turn hide occluded off, and it's still not quite wrapping. Or we could go Shift I. All right, that's an easy fix. Okay, I'm going to select that and now I'm going to hide that curve. I'm going to do the same here. This one might be even more problematic. So I'm just going to Shift I and get that on there like that. In fact, in this case, I'm actually just going to bring this in like that. I'm going to select the main surfboard object and I'm just going to cut that out like that. Press 2 and hide our curve. Okay, and in this case, I think we will do the same. Okay. So now what we've got here is we've got this little guy here, but there's just a bit of a problem here that these aren't quite connected. So what we could do is we could just try and isoparam that on. And it's not going to quite meet the edges. So what I will do, I'm going to press Shift X to delete that face. And this is turned into a sheet now, so it's a non-manifold object. And we can select that whole loop and we can go Alt F to patch that. But we're going to Shift B and bridge that together. We're going to make it like a G1, I think, at this stage, or a G2. Now, if we hold this to Shift F to patch, then we can Shift hold that. And we can I and imprint that geometry on there. And if we hide that curve, Shift I. Okay. And if we hide that curve, find the curve that it is. Keeps deleting that geometry that I created. So Shift I, hit that, find this curve here, and delete it. And then we've got our geometry there. So what I'm going to do here is, like, we could try and inset this or whatever now that we've got this new geometry here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way across here, and I'm actually going to just select all of these faces and I'm going to Shift D to duplicate them. Okay. And then I'm going to press Shift F and bring up our, you know, suggested options. And we're going to choose thicken, right? And then we're going to press Tab to mirror that. Okay. And once that's selected, we can select our main body and we can select from here. Now, we're starting to get like a lot of details on here that might not be necessarily the best. So we can select our main surfboard and go FRED, delete redundant topology. And you may not see anything happen. You might see something happen, but basically any unnecessary geometry is now being deleted. Okay. Okay, so we've got this kind of, if we just we just isolate this by pressing period again. And I'm just going to turn the overlays off by either clicking this or going Alt-Shift-Z. Okay, and we can see this, and we can even maybe go into rendered mode and see what it looks like in a different couple of rendered modes. I've got some custom environments in here as well. And I think this is starting to look quite nice. Back and front and everything. So let's go back into normal shader mode. I'm going to come out of isolated and let's just bring these two to the front. G. Now with these, I think I'm going to diverge from our source material, and I'm actually going to give these a little bit of a nice little bit of a fillet or a bevel. So let's go into point mode. I'm just going to select all of these. I'm going to hit B. And I want to go like that. And I want to trim these off. Right. And I'm going to just select those two only. Well, I was still in trim mode. Make sure you don't do that. Shift B. I just want to bring this down and make these a little bit pointy round. I'm not going to worry about them matching too much. You can spend time on it if you want. And then I'm going to join all of these together, these curves. Making sure I haven't selected anything at the back. I'm going to J. And I'm going to imprint all of them onto the body there like that. Okay. I'm going to do the same with these. Okay. I'm not going to, I'm going to imprint these two onto that. Keep pressing the wrong button. This, I, okay. And this one, I. Okay. Sometimes you need to go one at a time. Now I'm going to hide these curves. Okay, and now you can see that these are actually conforming to the surface of the body. So that's really cool. And there was one more detail I think that we had, which will be really easy to add. It's the circle up the top. Okay, so we can just add a circle. So what I would do is I would try and find a center point and just bring this circle. And what we could also do is maybe put our own little swing on it, and I could just, I'll explain what I'm doing here. So I've got my circle and I'm using split edge at point. And as I drag my cursor around it locks onto different points. So I'm going to choose that 3/4 point. And then I'm going to select the whole thing. I'm going to mirror this circle. And then I should be able to trim. There's two circles there. There we go. We've trimmed that off. Okay. And then I can select these two and I can join them. If we go into one, you can see that we've got just 3 points there. So there's other ways that you could have done that, but I think that's cool. And let's just like give it like a weird little logo. Okay. So we're going to select all of these. These are all conforming to the surface. Some of these here, they didn't quite join together. So we'll make sure that we'll make sure that each individual one is joined. J. I think that's done. That one was okay. And that one was okay. So I'm going to select all of these. And this one down here wasn't joined. So join. Going to select all of these and I'm just going to hit P for pipe. And that did not work. So one of them's not, oh, well, actually it did. So let's hit P for pipe. And it worked, but it didn't let me choose the pipe size. we're going to Shift I and just make sure that these are all on the body. Normal. Okay. And then we can take our curves and hide them all. Okay. And we should be able to hit P for pipe there and get that in there nicely. And then we're going to select the whole loop. You can hold down Shift, Alt and Shift to select the whole loop. And then we can, this one doesn't like it. So let's see which one is the problem, and then you problem solve it. P for pipe, that one works fine. P for pipe, that one works fine. P for pipe, that one works fine. This is the problem. So let's work this one. And this is also a problem. So let's just duplicate that and try and pipe it. Okay, and then do the same with this one. So what we're doing here is we're just duplicating the whole curve, turning it into a pipe, which it doesn't like. Right clicking it actually turns itself into a pipe, and then we can cue that out, and then we can just get rid of our curves. So a little bit of a hacky method there, but as you can see, if we turn our edges off, we're starting to get a little bit of a shape. And if we turn a different matte cap on or shader mode, you can see that we're starting to get a cool shape. This kind of looks like a power symbol. Now I did mention earlier on, I'm just going to turn my edges back on, that we don't want to really like micro fillet these things now. Like if you're doing this for 3D printing, maybe the time is the now to micro fillet. Okay. If you wanted to get those, if you're doing this for games, you really don't want to. You want to use these hard edges, and you want to add a bevel shader to them or something like that. I mean, the workflow has changed quite a lot in the past, so you could do a low to high poly workflow. Okay, so let's work on the fin. So let's turn the side back on. Okay, and let's just go to here under spline curve, or you might have control point curve. We just want to hold down right click and go to control point curve. And what we want to do is using as few points as possible, roughly block out this shape. Okay. And then right click when you get to the top, and then we can use a straight line for this one. Okay. And now that we've got that, we can go into one and we can actually just edit these points, and we can just GG and get them in place. I don't even think we need this one. Well, yes, we do. Okay. And just GG. GG. There we go. GG. So now that we've got our fin, we can just bring that out a little bit. Okay. And we can just join all of those curves together. And then we can just make this little riser thing here and just bring that up like that. No need to be too detailed with this. Now we can just mirror that across. Okay. I'm going to subdivide that. And I'm going to turn our side thing off for now. I'm going to get rid of this curve here. I'm going to subdivide that twice. And I'm just going to bring out the face a bit. Right. And we can bring these in. Just making sure we're in point mode only. And bring that in. And then with this, it's just got a little bit of an interesting face to it now. And we can bring that across. Press tab to mirror. We can really try, we can try for a full round. It might not let us. Okay. So let's just bring that in like that. Okay. Not too much to worry about that. Now what we can do is select this inside face of here. And as we pull that back, we can select this face, and it's going to conform totally to that. So what we can now do is we can join these two together by QQ. Okay. Hide our curves. Okay, and do what we need to do to make this look how we want it to look. Okay, so I've just chamfered that. I wanted to fillet it. And we can chamfer the sides here like that as well. And I'm going to cue and try and cue that to the surfboard. And I think that looks pretty cool. So we now have our main primary shapes. If I turn the silhouette on, as we rotate around this, as we orbit around this in 3D space, we can see what it is. We can also see that even at a silhouette, it's not a normal surfboard because it's got this little chunk coming out of it. Okay, so we'll go back in and let's go to our third stage, which is really adding the details. Okay, so firstly, with this one, I'm going to go really simple and I'm just going to press Control R and I'm going to do an ISO param. And then I'm going to select that and I'm just going to pull 3 of these out like so. Okay, part the way out. I'm going to subdivide them twice. Press 1 on my keyboard, only select the middle options, and I'm going to pull these out. Okay, and that's going to give them a little bit of a edge, and then I'm going to also, so we'll fillet these edges here, make sure that there's some continuity. And I'm going to also select all of these edges and give them a chamfer. Like that. Okay, so we've got this kind of, it's almost like a pipe. In fact, we could almost make it like a pipe. So if we O and inset that, we could just bring that down like so. Oh wait, for each one even. But that's extra detail that you're not really going to use. So I'm going to leave that out. We can maybe leave something like that for over here. Now for this one here, we could do something similar. We could have that going across like that. So for this section here, I'm going to do something with some lines. So I'm going to go into X-ray mode and make sure that I'm on this horizontal. Okay. I'm just going to make a rectangular array coming down to about here. I'm going to shift until it's only like 4. And I'm going to pipe. Right, I'm going to add 4 vertices. I don't know why I'm doing it this way. And I'm going to change the angle to 45 degrees. Right, and then we've got like 4 rectangles. I don't know why I made the rectangles like that, but it just seemed easier to me right in that moment. Okay. And we're going to select the top and bottom here until we've got our, that's one, it's not selected on the bottom, until we've got our desired sort of shape. Okay. And we just pull these out like so. Okay. And in. Like that. And then for each of these, we'll subdivide twice. We can toggle off other points in our scene that don't seem relevant. We can get rid of these curves. This is a really roundabout way to get to the point. All right. And then I'm going to bring these curves back. I'm going to bring these curves forward. And it looks like overall that these shapes are not quite the right size. So I'm going to go into 4 and I'm going to select them all as objects. We can scale that across like that. Bringing these in. and around like that. Okay, and then we can sort of add that, pressing Q again, to our entire silhouette, and we can add the chamfers on these as well. And what we could do is we could try and pull these around and see if it will hit. Okay, so yeah, we can pull these around and we can kind of have them staggered a little bit. So it's kind of cool. I'm kind of just like playing as we go. Okay, and on the back side here, so let's get some of these front details on here. So what we can do really is we can just start to build up some shapes in here. Okay, we can bevel that off. We can take the whole thing, we can GG, and then we can extrude that out. Okay, and then when we bevel this, or when we fillet these edges, we can try and make it match that. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do, is you can fillet these edges and you can make it match that. Okay, so that's matching there. And what I might do is I might select this whole thing and press shift space to make this a temporary construction plane. And I might mirror this across like that. And then we can mirror it down, but then just pick these two up and drag them G and up. Okay, and then we could really shift S, making sure that only point mode is selected. G, and take these points in. And this could be like G, and take these points in. Okay, and then like with these, so we could ISO param by pressing Control R and Tab, and hold down Shift to add more. So I guess these could be kind of like foot pads. We've got some utility here. Okay. And let's just delete these ones here. And let's mirror that again. Okay. And I might scale that on the X. Okay. And that looks pretty cool. And then we can just have like one final piece here. And we can make sure that we bevel that. And then when we pull this out, we make sure that these two lines are filleted and they match that curvature there. Okay, and we can bring this face all the way back in and maybe subdivide that as well. And bring that back in like that. Okay, so we've got something. It looks cool. So there was some text on that front side. So this is something that you can do in Plasticity, is you can add text. So you can go F text and add your this take refuge. But there's only so many fonts that it's going to let you choose from. Okay. and it can come with problems as well, which is why sometimes it's better to use an SVG. So I can bring that to the center there. So you can make some text, like any kind of text, you know. So you could take any sort of like text image, like a PNG or something like that, into you know, vector software like Illustrator or Inkscape, which is what I'm using here, and then you could use like one of their like trace bitmap into a vector, and just muck around with it. Okay, so we've got this. I'm going to click optimize. I'm going to click apply, and then I'm going to export this as an SVG. Okay, export. Okay, so I should have in my folder now an SVG, which I should be able to drag directly into Plasticity, and there we go. It's in centimeters. I'm going to click OK. I can rotate that X 90. Okay, and this is a better way of doing text in Plasticity at the moment, just because of the limited amount of fonts, and also the fact that you've got to trim them and all sorts. And the default font honestly kind of sucks because it's got lots of trimming that needs to be done. Now, these have all got hard edges at the moment, so what we can do is we can go F and we can rebuild the curve, okay, with points, and you'll see it starts off really low resolution, but we can up that resolution. We don't want to up it too high, right? But I think this will do for me for now. Like, so let's call it like 60 points. All right, so you get these things with all of these hard, lots and lots of points. You might have problems filleting that later. Okay, so in actual fact, let's give it a go. And we could just try, and there's a few ways we could do. We could try to select everything and imprint it, or we could try and just brute force. Hang on, we'll go into face mode and just select everything from the side, and then just brute force it into there like that. Okay, but it's not really conforming to the surface. Okay, so what we can do is we can try and deform. So now that we've got that there, as you saw what we were, so if we select all of these, the problem in here lies, and this may not bother you, is that as we pull those in, you'll see the ones on the outside have got more space there. So when the problem that we'll have is that when we finally select this and then Boolean these out, there'll be like varying levels of depth to each of the letters. So it may not be very apparent in this case, but what we can do is we can actually deform these texts to that surface so that it lands on that surface, and that might be a better way in a lot of cases. So that's what we'll try and do now. So if we select this face and we go F unwrap face, okay, we can actually, I don't know if we got that there. So we go F unwrap face. Okay, and then we can G and we can drag this out here. And we're going to use this face as a reference. So we're going to grab all of our little texts over here. We're going to edge mode and grab all of our texts. And we're going to hold down G, or press G once and then press G again. Hold down Control and lock it to this guy here. Okay, and then we can rotate this by like Y minus 90, something like that. And we'll give it a go, and we'll just bring it out from the surface a little bit. Okay, and we're going to go F deform, we're going to select our reference face, which is this unwrapped one, and then we're going to select our target face. Okay, and I don't know why that failed there, but we can... I think... Let's like rebuild this again. 100 maybe? 60? Okay. Now we've got those. We can toggle our points off. We can select those from the left. F, deform. And then it goes on our target face. But it's all wonky because it's gone a bit sideways. So we can hit flip UV and we can hit mirror. And there we go. We've got it on there now. And these are all a little bit off kilter. And they're also, you'll notice that they don't look like closed loops. So we actually have to patch these one by one or select all of them and hit patch. And now we've got all of these sheets, which we should be able to all thicken. Okay, and now you'll notice that they're conforming to this sort of shape of the surfboard. Okay, and we can really bring that out a little bit more, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be minusing this, and we're going to select all of those and that last one, and there we've got it. We've got our object. So we can hide all of our curves now, and we can hide this reference sheet. We won't need it anymore. And we can try and move these across actually. So if we go into face mode and select them all, we should be able to just G and pull them across. It might not like it, but we can. Okay. And you might notice that we got some of the backs of the curves there pulled out like that. So we can hit extrude and pull that out. And with the A, something similar has gone on. So we can O to offset if it'll allow us. Or we could just put a triangle in there, or we could not even worry about it, right? It looks pretty cool. So we should also be able to fillet most of these edges, although we might have trouble. You might want to, you know, pipe them instead, or do another thing. For this case, we're not going to problem solve that because that's just going too deep. That's a whole nother sort of tutorial. And you can add more details to your surfboard, right? And you can go and fillet and chamfer all your edges that you need to, if you need to. Okay. And basically that's it. Bob's your uncles. And with this technique, you can also just basically draw any picture. You can basically turn any bitmap, as long as it's got like the right amount of contrast, into a SVG, and then you can use this technique to get cool images on your onto your... I've done whole tutorials on this before, but cool images onto your objects. Now I'm going to leave this here. You can carry on and add your own details, or maybe start again with the reference and build up your own surfboard. But let me know in the comments what you think, and don't forget you can get a discount if you're still on your trial of a Plasticity license, either the studio or the indie license, with my code REFUGE10. And I'm going to leave it all at that. See you in the next one. Tschüss.